And you can see people with their hands up. If you'd like a copy of the bill, we would welcome you to take those. The bill is public. It's currently on the Senate website also. I'm Senator Stuart Adams, and thrilled to be here today because this has been such a challenging but rewarding experience. If you look at the bill, this is an issue that combines anti-discrimination with religious liberties. Probably something that is also historic. On the front cover of the bill, normally there is one Senate sponsor. Today, as you open that up, you'll see two Senate sponsors, Senator Urquhart, who has been extremely involved, Senator Adams, signifying and symbolic of bringing these two difficult issues together. Utah is a very conservative state, as many of us know. This issue between religious liberties and anti-discrimination can be, in fact, at times controversial or divisive. We've found a way to bring those issues together, have respect for one another, have respect for all, freedom for all, and actually try to make sure that we respect the rights of some, but do not infringe on the rights of others. And that's what we've tried to do. And I think it's monumental that we've been able to do that today. If Utah can do this, my opinion, it can be done anywhere else in the nation. The program is going to move forward as follows. I'm going to give some time to Senator Urquhart. Again, his long-standing efforts have been well recognized in Utah and elsewhere. Then we'll have some brief remarks by Senator Dabakis, Representative Dee, who's the House sponsor, Troy Williams from Equality Utah, then Elder Perry, Sister Marriott, and Elder Christofferson will take a minute.
Faith can move mountains. Today we announce to the people of Utah, the nation, and the world that we commit to move a mountain. Just as America was joined together in Utah and the future of the nation was transformed when the golden spike was pounded into the Transcontinental Railroad at Promontory Point, today we aim to join parties by protecting religious liberties and LGBT rights. We drive a spike into the false idea that religious freedom and LGBT rights are in opposition. Today we take a tremendous step to advance freedom, and with that, the well-being of all citizens of Utah. I'm going to walk through the bill. Not the most exciting thing, I know. We'll leave the exciting speeches to someone else. Let's go through the wonky details because it's the words that matter to make sure that we have this right. So I assume that some of you, the press, you have the bill in front of you, so I'm going to walk through it and describe what the bill does. It amends existing law that already precludes housing and employment discrimination regarding race, color, sex, pregnancy, religion, national origin, age, and disability. It applies to businesses with 15 or more employees and property owners with 4 or more properties. So let me go through specific lines to point out some of the things that people might be interested in. Employer is defined in lines 92 and 104. There are a few exemptions from who constitutes an employer. Religious organizations and affiliates and the Boy Scouts are exempted from that. Gender identity is defined in lines 105 through 109, and then again in 760 through 764. It's a big bill. The first part of the bill applies to employment, and the latter part of the bill applies to housing. Sexual orientation is defined in lines 146 and 147, again in lines 779 and 780. This bill has supremacy over local laws. A number of our municipalities have passed protections for non-discrimination. This law will control in the entire state of Utah. There is a non-severability clause in lines 186 through 190, repeated again in 794, 798. What that means is that this is a package deal. We're coupling together a number of things. If any provision of the bill, of the law fails, then the entire law fails. Enforcement resides with the Utah Labor Commission, as specified in lines 538 through 673. Dress and grooming standards are found in lines 676 through 679. Sex-specific facilities are found on lines 682 through 685. Religious protections. You'll see that there is freedom of expressive associations and free exercise of religion that is detailed in lines 689 through 691. And then the religious liberty protections are specified on lines 695 through 706. I'm very proud of this part of the bill. This part of the bill makes very clear that people of faith can act like people of faith. They can talk like people of faith, and they will be protected also in employment and housing. And then also some exemptions you should be aware of on the housing protections are found in lines 802 through 895. This has been representing an awful lot of work. Awful lot of eyes have looked at this. There are people in here who have bleary eyes, not only because we're choked up and excited about this, but because we're tired. We've put a lot of work into this, and I think that this represents a product that is great for the people of our state, and it can serve as a great model for the people of this nation if we move beyond the idea that somehow religious liberties and LGBT rights somehow are opposite to each other. They aren't. Freedom is freedom, and with this bill we promote significant freedom in the state of Utah. Thank you.
My name is Senator Jim Dabakis. I'm very, very proud to be a Utahn today. My heart is filled. I'm proud that we can start with such differences and we can talk and speak and be respectful, roll up our sleeves, communicate, find things that bring us together, and we can come together. Oh, if the country could be like this. If Washington could learn that after Prop 8 and where the gays in the LDS church were, and to think that we're able to sit down, to look beyond the harsh rhetoric, and to say, where can we come together? Religious liberty, non-discrimination, those are Utah values. They're things we can all live with. And I am very, very, very proud of the Senate. I'm proud even of the House. We're a community that I believe will be well served by the words in this, and not just the words. It's a spirit. I have grown so fond of the men and women that we've been working with. This is the best. This is the best of Utah. This is the message. This is our message for the world, that we can take tough issues, one of the great social issues of our time, and we can be reasonable, we can communicate, we can be respectful, we can be civil, we can find common ground, and we can make Utah an even greater state. This is a great moment for Utah.
I'm honored to stand here today with these gracious people that I've had the opportunity to work with over the last few weeks. I must say that sometimes I would go home late at night and I'd think, will we ever get there? But we have, through the love that we've shown for each other, which is an example, we found a Utah solution. I think today we send a message from Capitol Hill. We don't send this message just to Utahns. We send this message to the world. That Utah has a way to come together in these particular interests. And that way is through the love which we share and the inalienable rights we have as citizens of this nation and of this state. I'm just excited to be a part of it. In one sentence, I would have to say, we are all children of a Father in heaven who loves us equally. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Troy Williams, the Executive Director of Equality Utah. So phenomenal to see you here today. This is a historic day. People from diverse backgrounds have come together to craft what no one thought was possible. Protections for Utah's gay and transgender community and protections for people of faith. Now, the Williams Institute, no relation, estimates that approximately 55,000 LGBT adults live in Utah. Now, if you add Mormons to that number, you know why in Salt Lake City it's almost impossible to find a good ticket to see Wicked. It's estimated that just over 37,000 gay and transgender Utahns are part of our state's workforce. We are doctors, lawyers, dancers, artists, musicians, hairdressers, and dreamers. And when I was a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I didn't know any of this. I was just scared. As a gay Utahn, I couldn't imagine for myself a positive future. I wish that 20-year-old me could have gazed into the future to see this day, where leaders from the gay and transgender community are standing side by side with leaders of the LDS Church, with apostles of the LDS Church, to work together to provide protections for 55,000 gay and transgender Utahns. If the 20-year-old me could have seen this day, I would have felt tremendous hope for the future. And the work that we do today, the legislation that we pass this session, will provide hope to thousands of LGBT youth living in Utah. We will send a message to them that you belong in Utah. This is your home. In closing, I want to acknowledge my Mormon father. It's difficult for him to have a gay son. And you can imagine it's probably a little bit more difficult for him to have a gay activist son who's often always on television or in the newspaper. But he taught me the very best of Mormon values. To mourn with those who mourn, to comfort those who need comfort, to always bear one another's burdens. Those values remain a deep part of who I am today. In fact, they are why I work for Equality Utah. Passing SB296 affirms that not only will Utah's LGBT community have the liberty to work and live in the state that we love, but it also means that we are woven into the legal fabric of this beautiful state. It means that we too can declare, this is the place. This is our home. Thank you.
We selected some time ago Sister Marriott. Elder Christofferson would be our spokesman on this particular subject as we journey through the legislature year. So I thought I would start today by just reminding us something about our heritage. 150 years ago, Lincoln gave his famous speech, the Gettysburg Address. And just remind you of a couple of those words. With malice towards none, with charity for all, with a firmness in right, as God gives us to see the right. Sister Merrill?
Thank you, Elder Perry. When the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints held a news conference in late January, we offered some thoughts and some principles on those vital issues of religious freedom and non-discrimination. We recognized that our country is engaged in a great debate about family, marriage, individual conscience, and collective rights, and religious freedom. This nation had become and is polarized between these two sides, religious freedom and gay rights. We spoke of the need to affirm the rights of some without taking away from the rights of others. While reaffirming that the Church's doctrine will not change, we suggested a way forward in which those with different views on complex issues could come together and find a solution that would be fair for everyone. We also called on government to support legislation which protects key religious freedom rights while providing protections in housing and employment to the LGBT community. Because of the efforts of many, Senate Bill 296 is now before the Utah Legislature. We are happy to be here today and give our support to this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Marriott. As Sister Marriott said, when the church held a news conference on religious freedom and non-discrimination in late January, we called on stakeholders to seek for solutions that will be fair to everyone. In this approach, we acknowledged that neither side or no party may get all they want. It is better that both sides get most of what is desired than to have a winner-take-all where one side loses. We asserted that accommodating the rights of all people requires wisdom and judgment, compassion and fairness, and that politically it requires dedication to the highest level of statesmanship. Despite the challenges and the difficulties, the complexity of negotiations, a spirit of respect and goodwill has allowed all involved to respect the differences of one another and bring about Senate Bill 296. Inevitably, some will be critical of aspects of this bill, we understand. However, the bill contains strong religious freedom protections and a fair approach in housing and employment. Today we want to express deep gratitude and appreciation to those who worked so diligently to craft a solution which can serve as an effective model for other local and state governments wrestling with these same complex issues. And so, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is very pleased today to support Senate Bill 296, Antidiscrimination and Religious Freedom Amendments. Thank you.
Can't emphasize enough the monumental day that this is to have a very divisive issue, as this started out as simply a anti-discrimination issue, and move forward with a spirit of respect, compassion, fairness, freedom for all. But I want to just emphasize, if I could, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate the leadership of so many, and as you've heard today, especially the LDS churches, they've stood for principles and values and yet showed forth great compassion. In this bill with religious liberties, it protects religions, protects churches and their affiliates. It protects religious schools. It protects their employment decision. It protects small family-held businesses. It protects the Boy Scouts of America. In Utah, we know how valuable the Boy Scouts of America, and in many instances, the Boy Scouts are actually an affiliate of the churches and religious organizations that they serve. It allows for free expression for employees, both in the workplace and outside of the workplace, without retribution. It allows for employers to establish regulations and dress standards within the workplace. What a significant effort that started with simply an anti-discrimination effort. It's a monumental day for Utah, a monumental day, I think, for the entire country, as you see a very conservative red state step forward with compassion, fairness for all, and accomplish this great task. And I'm going to now excuse, if I could, I know those that have been here from the LDS Church, Sister Marion, Elder Perry, Elder Christofferson. I know you've got other things to do. I'm going to excuse you, and then we're going to open it up for questions and answers, if we could do that. Thank you again.
Thank you.
We'll bring you this way.
Thanks again.
Thank you. We appreciate your interest. If I could, Senator Urquhart, Senator Dabakis, Representative D, maybe come forward. I will probably decide who takes what questions so that I can at least deflect the hard ones. But I'm sure there are questions. I'll open it up. Go ahead.
Any concerns that the language that you've defined in here as far as religious liberties may be construed to say non-traditional religions, or if somebody says, you know, hey, I have a sincerely held religious belief for Nazism, so now you have to accommodate that.
You know, we have spent hours and hours and hours wordsmithing with many of the best minds. In fact, we've had some experts that are here with us today to try to make sure it in fact does not do that. So the answer to that question is absolutely not. Other questions?
Can you explain the protection for the Boy Scouts explicitly and not other groups?
Sure, I'll let Senator Urquhart touch on that.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Good question. You know, on the one hand, did you not ask that? On the one hand, the Boy Scouts, it's a very vital part of Utah. Scouting, in many ways you could argue that Utah is ground zero for scouting and activities of scouting, so it's something that our citizens do greatly support, which is reason enough to be in the bill. But what that provision does, it simply recognizes that this case has been settled by the United States Supreme Court, Boy Scouts of America v. Dale, recognizing the Boy Scouts as an expressive association. In case there's any doubt about that, we wanted to go ahead and clarify that in statute.
Okay, other questions?
Do you have the votes to pass it?
What?
Do you have the votes to pass it?
I'll never predict the votes, but we hope we do.
Senator, how often have you seen the LDS Church support a specific piece of legislation? That doesn't seem to happen very often, where they come out and support a specific piece of legislation.
Some of you are maybe here. Senator Hilliard, are you still here? Maybe he left, but some that have been here a long time, I'd probably deflect that answer, but I've never seen such effort and leadership by any religious organization I've seen during the past few weeks.
I anticipate the church will support the competing religious liberties bill by Representative Christensen.
You know, they've left. I'd let them speak to turn this out, but very obviously they support Senate Bill 296, and I think they've said that 3 or 4 and maybe more times. I was listening very closely, hopefully you also.
Were there any representatives from the Boy Scouts involved in these talks?
There were not. Senator Urquhart, I think, touched on that very, very well. I stand. Yes, please stand up.
What are you talking about? All right.
Okay. And I probably would qualify that. Many of us are former Boy Scouts, but officially not. But Senator Urquhart touched on, there was a Supreme Court case that ruled in favor of the Boy Scouts, and that is simply trying to codify and reflect that Supreme Court ruling.
They didn't specifically request that?
No.
When Leper Troy addressed the religious liberty protection, could it create a carve-out? Could it create some way for people who express their opinions to get mulligan protection from saying discriminatory or hurtful things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the religious liberty protection in this bill do not grant a license to discriminate against anyone, including gay and transgender people. What they do is recognize that both inside of the workplace and outside of the workplace, people of faith have the same rights to free speech as everyone else, and they cannot be infringed.
But can this be interpreted a little more broadly than maybe you would like?
No. I think the language is very tight, and it clarifies exactly what I said, which is to say that people of faith have the same freedom of expression of their beliefs as everyone else. It doesn't contain, to go straight to Robert's question, some license to discriminate for individuals or businesses or anything like that. Every provision in this law treats gay and transgender people in Utah like everyone else, and people of faith like everyone else. It's a full, equal treatment. It's truly fairness for all.
I don't know if this is a question for you, Cliff, or for Senator Urquhart, but there's some language in there about employers can make reasonable regulations about facilities or dress standards, but also accommodating gender identity. I'm wondering what would be an example of a reasonable regulation?
Sure, and first let me point out that I'm a Star Scout. I stopped there because I thought it was more fitting with my personality. Okay, that line, the lines regarding reasonable rules and policies, those are found in 682 through 685. And so we figured that was the best place to land because every workplace is different. I mean, how it's set up, what the job requires. And so you see reasonableness in a lot of our laws because we, as lawmakers, we can't envision every possible scenario out there. And so we figured that this gives employers and employees a lot of flexibility in figuring out, okay, we have a situation here that legally we have to deal with. What is the best way we can do that? And so again, it depends on the facts specific to that situation, and we think that that gives employers the most leeway to figure out a way to be respectful to their employees, but to do it in a way that doesn't hurt the bottom line.
Did any of the representatives of the LDS Church put forward specific language that was adopted in the bill?
Oh, heavens, Bob. Everyone who has been involved in this came forward with a lot of language. So and we won't quote some of mine.
Everybody's got some language and said, yes, we'll put that in.
You know, Stuart, I don't know if you have anything specific on that. I mean, you look at a lot of the language on religious organizations and affiliates. You look at language regarding college housing. I mean, obviously those things would be, the LDS Church would have had significant involvement in that, you know, whether it was dropped in word for word, their suggestions. I would doubt that. I don't think anyone came up with language that someone else didn't amend 10 or 20 times.
Can we go back for a second to the question of accommodation and employers?
Sure. Just basically, again, to answer the question, there's a lot of input. I'm looking in the back of this room, and I can't emphasize enough. We have our legislative staff. They don't want me to point them out or even look at them, but this was wordsmithed, worked over by what I believe are some of the best minds, not only in Utah but in the nation. We have experts on anti-discrimination and religious liberties from around the nation that have helped. So to ask what input's been there, I think we've tried to use, and I've probably said it over and over again, that we want to do what's right. And we're trying to find the very, very best we can find. And that's what we've used to be able to put into this bill. And so there's been input by stakeholders from not only here locally, I see other attorneys, and they probably don't want me to point them out, but we've tried to use the very best minds as we move through the process, and I believe we have. So the next question, sorry, then I'll come back.
And I apologize for saying this.
Yeah.
Is the bill saying then that an employer can make a decision about, say, a transgender person's ability to dress however they feel appropriate or use whatever facilities they feel appropriate? Are you providing some sort of affirmative defense for an employer to say no?
And again, I'll let Senator Urquhart field that, but it's very clear in the bill as to what that does. And I think, again, we're trying to have fairness between an employee and employer, and standards that might be held in the workplace that are significant for that employer to be able to accomplish what they believe is their core goal as an employer. And I think to be able to balance that between an employee and employer is significant. So, Senator Urquhart.
Yeah, again, let me read the language. Line 682. This chapter may not be interpreted to prohibit an employer from adopting reasonable rules and policies that designate sex-specific facilities, including restrooms, shower facilities, and dressing facilities, provided that the employer's rules and policies adopted under this section afford reasonable accommodations based on gender identity to all employees. Pretty straightforward. And so, what this is saying is that sexual orientation, gender identity cannot be the basis for discrimination in the workplace. And so if someone has a transgender employee, then there have to be reasonable accommodations. And it does give the employer flexibility in determining what those are.
Were there, Senator Adams?
Yes.
Meet with representatives from what other churches?
We've tried, yes, we've reached out to many stakeholders. In fact, I heard a whispering in my ear to answer to that question also. There's the Title VII in the federal code or statute is what we've used in many cases to be able to be a guiding element. And again, that's again with great legal counsel and advice. We tried to use that as we've looked at that employer-employee relationship. Jim has something to say, then we'll take one or two more questions, then we're going to wrap it up.
On the other religious leaders, Bishop Hayashi of the Episcopal Church and Bishop Wagan of the Catholic Church, I think while we just released it, it's very difficult to get the bill out. It just came out at noon, but I spoke over a number of times to both of them. And I can't say that they are specifically supportive of this bill, but they both gave very, very strong indications that they are for religious liberty and that they are also for non-discrimination. So that we were inclusive with many, many, many community groups, many religious groups, and that's the answer to that.
At this point, do you have a committee hearing? We're coming down to a very...
Great question. If you look on the agenda, you'll see this on the Business Labor Committee for tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock for those of you that like to attend. So that's probably a good spot to end because I'm sure we'll have more input as we move through the committee process.
It's second on the agenda tomorrow morning.
Second on the agenda, committee chair, Senator Bramble's indicated where it's at. And it will move through the process, and we'll see as it, I'm sure you follow it as it moves through. Thanks again for being here.